What's going on, everybody? Jeff here. Welcome back to the channel. What a turn of events inside the market. We've got a little bit of poor data before the open. However, the market decided to rip up to the upside after being stuck in this channel for quite some time, only to slowly fade off to the downside after Fed President Harker had began speaking, really still squashing the rumors about a potential Fed pivot, even though there is this looming liquidity crisis. All right. I also want to talk about APE, which is up over 11%, and AMC up over 3% as I'm making this video. Talk a little bit about what I mentioned in my previous APE video, talking about the offering, when it is set to be complete, if it's already been leaked out. We're going to take a look at the charts and everything. So let's get right into it. First off, take a look at the charts today. Now, we are still range bound, within the SPY. I talk about this 356 area as well as this 370 area. We've been channeling in between ever since we broke into it all the way back on September 23rd. We did have a little bit of a fake breakout to the upside. We mentioned right back inside that channel. We had a little bit of a fake out, obviously, to the downside from CPI. And even this morning, the numbers came out. We bounced off another critical level at a nice solid move to the upside, only to really get squashed and continuing to move to the downside. And let's talk a little bit about those numbers. All right, one of them was home sales. Existing home sales drop for the 8th straight month in September. Sales of previously owned homes fell for the 8th straight month in September as mortgage rates marched higher, further eroding affordability in the housing market. This is really a slow incline we are seeing, and I expect it to kind of rapidly increase a little bit before eventually, deals just become a little bit too lucrative to pass up, and eventually we get a little bit of a curve. Now, on the contrary side, we did have weekly jobless claims. Now, it's a very ironic market that we're in, and I mention this every time job numbers come out, but the number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefits fell unexpectedly last week, indicating the labor market remains tight even as demand for labor is cooling amid higher interest rates. So we do have companies that are slowing their hiring process, in one sense. All right. Now, normally when unemployment benefits fall, it's positive for the market. It means there's growth. Everything's doing well. However, the market that we're in right now, and because of the Federal Reserve's actions, like I've mentioned numerous times before, they want to see this number higher. It shows that them raising rates is actually doing its job. Higher unemployment, slow down, interest rates, slower spending, and so forth. There's many different metrics they look at, and this is one of them. So this number was released before market open, as well as the home sales, and then here we are popping right out of the gate, only to get pulled back. Now, Fed President Harker, he started speaking at around 12 noon, and just slightly before that is really market started to turn, only to get pummeled to the backside. So lately, and I'm even mentioned in a previous video talking about the bond market, that Janet Yellen has said, listen, we're really starting to see this liquidity crisis, something that you and I have seen for quite some time, but now the Federal Reserve, who is very reactive, is starting to see a little bit of a liquidity crisis, and that actually calls for concern and a possibility for a Fed pivot. Now that would bring on a whole different type of crash other than just an economic crash leading into a recession. It's a whole different story, and that could indicate the Federal Reserve to pivot. However, you still have, Fed members and presidents also stating that, listen, we're ways away from a Fed pivot. Now, obviously, it really seems like they're just reiterating the same thing that they've said for the past, 4 or 5 months as of right now. Once they realize inflation has really kind of just been hanging out and it's not starting to cool, the market tends to react differently. At times, the market chooses not to believe, what they say, and at other times it really hangs on to and begins to pull back. Like I also like to look at is, like I said, from a chart standpoint, we're really just hanging out inside this range until we get that solid breakout, to either direction with a confirmation. We're not going to get into this type of trend like we had, ever since the 13th, when we had that CPI miss all the way, till the end of the month for quite some time. We really got to get out of that channel. Then we can solidly move to one direction. We have a lot of things happening. It's going to be third quarter GDP estimates, which I will talk about as we get closer to that date, as well as midterms. Now, let's talk about APE. Before we get into the charts, one thing I do want to mention is an article on the opposite side. 5 investors betting big on AMC stock. Now this article talks a little bit about them as a company, leading into potentially their earnings. Okay, how is their debt payoff going to affect some of their bottom line? How much money is going towards interest, now versus previously, what their expected interest payments are going to be. This is all going to be released after they've restructured their debt. They paid off 106 million, and obviously that 400 million is extended 4 years out. So there's a much longer time frame to where they have to pay it off. And like I said, it's going to change their payments a little bit. However, interest being higher, that's going to vary a little bit. But like I said, I do expect it to be less because Adam Aaron clearly made that decision to benefit the company. Okay, at least one would hope so. Talking about the 5 investors betting big on AMC stock. These are really just the investors that hold a large amount of shares when it comes to AMC. We know Vanguard and BlackRock. 2 numbers I want to point out here, and some of these aren't always adding up, is Fintel has Vanguard at almost half this, 47 million, BlackRock at 25 million. All right, they got their information from Yahoo Finance, which is showing 95 million, 18%, 51 million, 20%. Long and short is they haven't really gotten out of their positions as of late. And if you're looking, at the chart, it's beginning to form a bit of a base. Now, I've said this for quite some time that, we're just not in the market anymore where it's speculative, where they're betting big on high growth. Okay. Interest rates are going higher. That margin money, that free money, that easy money policy just isn't there. And unfortunately, it is stocks that are, potential squeeze stocks, your high growth. Okay. Your future life, technological revolution, continuances way down the road. Those are the stocks that really get pummeled. And unfortunately, AMC really just fits into no other category, but it is starting to form a bit of a base here. And if it can get a little bit of a rally, the market has to cooperate. If the market does not cooperate, unfortunately, it's not going to move to that upside. If you look at this chart on an intraday, it looks very different now than it did even 6 months ago. Okay. You can see that it is merely 100% controlled by algos. Okay, the biggest and easiest way to see that, all right, when you zoom in a little bit, is just seeing all of these. It's like a barcode pattern. There's not heavy consistent bidders bidding it up, okay, or sellers continuing to sell it down. Maybe it happens a little bit intraday as of right here, but on a larger time frame, and the past, like I said, few months, it's really been controlled heavily by algos. Also taking a look at just the volume. Okay, today we're at 15 million shares, when there was a time we would average anywhere between 60 and 90 million shares traded a day. Okay, but it is up. Like I said, it is forming a bit of a base, and as well as APE. Now, APE has been on a much better trend ever since it really bounced off that 150. It's starting to kind of break out of some levels. It does have a bit of a flag and a flat top formation over the 200 on the hourly chart, continuing to move up to the upside. Like I said, okay, and there was even another stock, and I forget which one, that people were talking about inside the group. It was a small cap where market makers are going to want to hold this up, especially because they're heavily incentivized to be able to hold up and have an offering go through, because they stand to make a lot of profit off of it. Now, after the offering, like I said, generally it's the cycle goes: when an offering is announced, there's a heavy pullback in the stock. When the offering is completed, there's a bit of a relief. Traders ride it to the upside, and then it kind of just stabilizes somewhere in between that point. It doesn't just continue to obviously rise. The goal behind all of this obviously is to continue to trap the shorts to the upside. Now, eventually, okay, shorts, because, and this is not just with AMC or APE, it's going to be the entire market. Like I said to everybody inside the group, eventually there's going to be no more bear market rally. And the reason being is because we're eventually going to hit bottom. Now, I still, looking at the charts, just the structure of the overall big picture, we haven't hit bottom yet, as well as macros haven't changed. But if macros shift, if there is a bit of a, I don't want to even say Fed pivot, because I think Fed pivot is a bit far stretch, but if there is just a little bit of letting off the gas, all right, to where they're raising rates a little bit less than expected, you can expect a big shock to happen. We've not only watched that with stocks that are heavily shorted, small caps, okay, your speculative stocks, but also just the entire market, where we get that slow grind to the upside and upside. All right, so there's gonna be plenty of time to be able to capitalize on that. And the goal behind all of this is obviously just to slowly get ahead of it and be able to anticipate it and wait for the move. So once the move happens, you get that confirmation, you can continue to ride it. So guys, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.